This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, welcome to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. This is New Day. It's Wednesday, August 28th. It's 6 o'clock here in New York, and the breaking news bracing for a direct hit. In fact, not one, but two direct hits. Puerto Rico, then Florida. You need to pay attention here because there has been an important and dangerous shift in the forecast for what will be Hurricane Dorian. This is the current situation. Overnight, the storm got stronger and is now headed straight for Puerto Rico. Impact is expected in just a few hours right through the eastern side of the island, which has been among the slowest to recover from Hurricane Maria 2 years ago.
Obviously, this is the last thing they need. Then all eyes will be on Florida. Everyone from Miami to Savannah, Georgia needs to be on alert this morning as Dorian is forecast to gain strength to a Category 2 storm before it makes landfall in the U.S. The governor of Florida is urging people to prepare now for the coming impact. So we are on the ground in Puerto Rico as the storm approaches. But first, let's begin our coverage with CNN's Chad Myers with the storm's new forecast track. What is it, Chad?
It is to the east side of Puerto Rico, almost a direct line of where Maria made landfall now. Now, yesterday at this time, we were way down here heading toward the DR, missing Ponce altogether, which is right here where our reporter Polo will be just in a second. But now we are on the eastern side over Vieques, over St. Croix, over the eastern island, eastern part that was hit so very hard. So either this is a storm that does not follow models or models that just cannot do a good job with this storm, because this was out of the cone yesterday. So we always say follow the cone. Remember, the cone is wide. Vieques, St. Croix, you weren't even in it yesterday. But now here's the big deal. What happens after that? What happens after that 70-mile-per-hour wind goes through Puerto Rico? It will make a run at Florida, maybe even up the East Coast, as a Category 2 or higher hurricane. So this is the storm now, getting a lot brighter in colors overnight. That means the center is getting more intense. Still a 60-mile-per-hour storm. But you can see it on radar from Puerto Rico right now. Not quite there yet, but it'll certainly be a center of circulation as it moves over that Vieques area and then on the eastern side of the island. But where does it go from there? This is the big question. There are models that take it up the East Coast and now make landfall in North Carolina. There are storms here, a lot of models here, all the way down to almost West Palm. So we're going to have to watch where this goes and when it gets there. For right now, it's on its way to Puerto Rico. We'll keep watching it for you throughout the hours.
Okay, Chad, we know that you will be getting at least hourly updates and bringing them to us. Thank you very much. So hours before Dorian makes landfall, Puerto Rico's government says preparations are 90% done and the shelters are open. So CNN's Polo Sandoval is live in Ponce on the southern coast of the island. What's the situation there?
You know, Allison, that's hundreds of shelters that are open across the island. We spoke about 24 hours ago. Of course, people here were expecting a smaller impact, particularly because those projections were showing this storm that would possibly just skirt the island. But now, as you just heard from Chad, with the more direct impact, there certainly is a concern. And that is some bad news for many people who are still recovering from the events of 2017 when Hurricane Maria swept through the region here. So perhaps the power grid is what is the most vulnerable thing. In fact, here in Ponce, there were people who were in the dark for many months. So the concern is that even this tropical storm could negatively impact their lives here. And it's not just the power grid, but also the potential for heavy rains, possibly mudslides around the island. That's also concerning. We're told that non-essential employees with the government have been told to stay home. Kids, too. There will be no school today on the island. As for FEMA, learning from the past, they have staged a large amount of resources, up to 500 personnel pre-staged here on the island. Allison, we're told that officials have certainly not only learned from the past, but they certainly are increasing the numbers when you compare them to what we saw in 2017. Back to you.
I'll take it, Polo, and we'll only note that where you're standing will look very different in just a few hours. Polo Sandoval in Puerto Rico, which is now bracing for this direct hit. Joining us now by phone is Jack Parrish, the flight director for NOAA's Hurricane Hunters. Jack, thank you so much for being with us. You've been in and out of Dorian, I understand, 7 times, including most recently 11 o'clock last night. What are you seeing from this storm?
Yes, sir. We started out on a Monday from Lakeland, ended up in St. Croix. Then yesterday we flew St. Croix and ended up in Barbados because St. Croix is kind of under the gun right now. We saw a very disorganized center, a very compact storm, It did not even have the kind of banding structure that you can see from the Puerto Rico radar right now. Very disorganized even from our altitude at 10,000 feet to other airplanes in there slightly lower. The organization began to become apparent during the flight last night, and I suspect when we go through it this afternoon, we'll see even more of that organization.
So Dorian is basically getting itself together at this point, and I understand you're seeing the first signs of a consistent eye wall, yes?
Yes, that's what we did not see at all on our radar systems on Monday. We began to see it during the second half of our flight last night. We were making multiple passes and using our tail Doppler radar. NOAA has tail Doppler radars on P-3 aircraft. It's a unique instrument that can give you the three-dimensional precip field and wind field in all quadrants, and we began to see that overall banding on the east, north, wrapping around to west side. That's become more apparent on the Puerto Rico radar this morning.
And thus getting stronger before your eyes, and when you head back out today, it might be even stronger still. And after Puerto Rico, the forecast puts it out over the warm water before hitting Florida. What will you look for in the coming days?
Oh, yes, sir. It's very important. Among other things, we're going to go through the center of the storm 4 times today, going from Barbados back to our home base in Lakeland, NOAA's Aircraft Center there. Biggest reason we're going back to Lakeland is we can bring in our other crews that are on standby there. We've been doing one-a-day flights out here in the islands, giving great coverage to the islands, but now we're going to be putting aircraft in twice per day, both our P-3 aircraft and the G-4 aircraft that does the environmental flow around the storm. So you can definitely say that we're putting all of our teams into this. I think anyone who can fly for NOAA will be flying in the next few days.
And one of the things that's interesting about this storm is it's not big in terms of its square mileage. It's a smaller storm, but that can make it harder, I understand, sometimes to understand what's going on with it. Why is that?
One of the big confusions here has been positive and negative effects in terms of Dorian's growth. A bigger storm with all that dry air surrounding it would have had greater impacts due to the dry air. This one has managed to keep itself sort of a tight, compact area of positive growth in the midst of an area that would normally be hostile. So it has kept itself together, and at least from a meteorologist's viewpoint, the less that the core of the storm interacts with the island of Puerto Rico, the greater chance it has of keeping its act together as it gets north of Puerto Rico.
And just what has it been like to be in this storm? What has made this unique from the other storms you've been inside?
It's been kind of a tale of two storms. We were flying around at 10,000 feet, which is certainly in the heart of the storm. All of our flying on the south and sort of west side has been benign. We haven't seen that much on the radar. All our flying on the north side and on the east side, we've been through numerous thunderstorms. We saw a lot of lightning last night. Some pretty decent turbulence, nothing that's out of the order for what we do. But we definitely were seeing certain areas where we spent a lot of time belted in nice and tight, and then other areas that were just different. That's an asymmetric system. Asymmetric systems aren't terribly healthy, but this one is becoming more symmetric.
All right, Jack Parrish, Flight Director for NOAA's Hurricane Hunters. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And this is a reminder of why the work you do is so important, because this has been a tough storm to track, and it's only by going inside the way you have repeatedly over the last several days that we're getting any line on where this is headed, and it's getting increasingly dangerous. Thanks, Jack.
Thank goodness Jack does it so the rest of us don't have to be in those storms.
You didn't hear? You're headed. You're headed up in the air.
Who did I tick off? Meanwhile, also breaking this morning, the Queen pushed into the center of the Brexit debate. Why the government is now asking her to suspend Parliament. All that coming up. Okay, breaking news now from the UK. Boris Johnson, the new British Prime Minister, is asking the Queen to suspend Parliament before the October 31st Brexit deadline. Why? Well, Nick Robertson is live in London with all that this means. What's happening, Nick?
Alison, this is completely without recent historic precedence that the Queen should have her vacation in Scotland interrupted by a Prime Minister asking her to suspend Parliament. The reason that it is broadly being viewed that Boris Johnson is doing this because he wants to head off opposition in Parliament from his own party and from opposition parties who want to block him having a no-deal Brexit, leaving the European Union without having a deal agreed. What took place yesterday in London was a meeting of all the opposition parties, and they decided there that they would not have a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson's government and try to bring down his government. Instead, they would find a legal mechanism in Parliament to block a no-deal Brexit. What Boris Johnson has woken up and done today is head that off by suspending Parliament and essentially not giving Parliament enough time to debate and come up with a legal formula and framework to stop a no-deal Brexit. We've heard from the Speaker of the Houses of Parliament, we've heard from the last Chancellor of the Exchequer, both saying that this is outrageous what Boris Johnson is doing. Opposition MPs are calling it outrageous. They're calling it dangerous. Boris Johnson, on the other hand, is sticking to his guns and saying that Parliament still will have enough time to debate Brexit.
There will be ample time on both sides of that crucial October the 17th summit, ample time in Parliament for MPs to debate the EU, to debate Brexit and all the other issues. Ample time.
This is without recent historic precedents. This is deepening the battle lines over Brexit. We really are in uncharted territory here. This is going to cause and create huge anger and huge animosity. Parliament will sit down again next week, be suspended the week after.
Yes,
John,
if democracy is not working for you, suspend it for a while, which is what the critics are saying is happening in Britain right now. Nick, stand by. We're going to come back to you because this is causing huge outrage and is worth following over the next few hours. The other breaking story this morning, Puerto Rico bracing for a direct hit from what will be Hurricane Dorian. And Puerto Rico is still recovering from Maria nearly 2 years ago. Now, overnight, President Trump did approve an emergency declaration, but before that, this is what he wrote. For some reason, Congress approved $92 billion for Puerto Rico last year, an all-time record of its kind for anywhere. Now, you should know, it's not a record and it's not true. It's a lie. It was not $92 million. It was $42 million. He's off by more than a factor of two, and only about $12 million has been spent, and he knows that. Now, in response to that tweet, which again, we don't know why the president sent it, well, this is what the San Juan mayor, what, you want to go?
Well, I mean, I know where he's getting that number.
It's not a real number.
It's an internal OMB report that says over the lifetime of the storm, of Maria, so in other words, 10 years out, 20 years out, that it could, on the outside, get to $92 million. So that is not what Congress has spent. But in other words,
and it isn't even what Congress is appropriated.
Agreed. But I'm saying that sometimes he pulls things out of thin air, and sometimes he hears them on Fox.
He knows.
And so
he knows
that's
this isn't
the
true.
origin of that.
He knows this isn't true. It's been out there for a long time, and he has to know at this point. And if he doesn't, someone needs to tell him. The mayor of San Juan in Puerto Rico, no fan of the president, said this overnight.
His behavior, his lack of understanding, and it is ludicrous. 3,000 Puerto Ricans did not open their eyes this morning because this racist man did not have it within him to do his job. So get out of the way, President Trump, and let the people that can do the job get the job done.
I want to bring in Joe Lockhart, former press secretary under President Clinton, Elena Plott, White House correspondent for The Atlantic and a CNN political analyst, and John Avlon, CNN senior political analyst. And let me just read the full tweet from the president again. He lied about the amount of money, $92 billion, and he says it's an all-time record high for anywhere. And the point is, John, what message is he trying to send? How does this help the people of Puerto Rico, A, by lying, and B, by sort of suggesting, well, it's Puerto Rico's fault for being in the way of the hurricane?
Yeah, he's not trying to help. let's just be very clear about this. He's not trying to help. He's insulting the victims of a past hurricane that cost more lives than 9/11, for which there has not been nearly enough government reflection, let alone a congressional inquiry, which there should be. And in the face of an oncoming hurricane, he's blaming them preemptively. And it is an utter abandonment of that basic role of a president, which is to be the comforter in chief. He's actually causing harm by blaming the victims in advance of another hurricane in the wake of a devastating one.
Because the first sentence of that tweet, Joe, says, quote, wow, yet another big storm. Will it ever end? If he's tired of them, imagine how the people in Puerto Rico feel.
Yeah, I agree with John. And I was really struck by the beginning of that, which, as in, wow, like, I'm powerless here. I've got nothing to do with this. I remember from my time in the White House, what we'd be doing is we wouldn't be saying, wow. We'd be talking about all of the material we'd pre-positioned, all of the things that FEMA's doing, all of the efforts to help people. And instead, you read in the paper this morning that the president is diverting money from FEMA, from disaster relief, to build the wall that's not going to get built that the Mexicans were supposed to pay for. That's a wow to me.
I have to say there's some new reporting overnight in the Washington Post that's stunning on the issue of the wall and shows just how important a priority it is for the president. How important? According to the Washington Post, he's telling his staff to break the law if that's what it takes to get parts of the wall built. Josh Austin and others report this. When aides have suggested that some of his orders are illegal or unworkable, Trump has suggested he would pardon the officials if they would just go ahead, aides said. He's waved off worries about contracting procedures and the use of eminent domain, saying, take the land, according to officials present at the meetings. Don't worry, I'll pardon you, he has told officials in meetings about the wall. Let me put this first to you, because you used to work somewhere else. Yeah. What would have happened had another president at a previous time just said, take the land, eminent domain?
Thank God Fox News Channel is not still around to hear this, because they would have freaked out anytime there was any suggestion about President Obama using eminent domain for anything. Roger Ailes and therefore Fox News blew a gasket about the idea of seizing private land. This is a democracy. How dare he be an emperor? Now, I don't remember there ever being a story about the president then saying, even if it's illegal, I will pardon you back then. I can't wait to hear what Fox says about this morning.
And Elena, I think more than anything, this just goes to show how important the wall is as an issue for the president heading into the election.
Well, there are a few things going on here. The first is that, the other day I was speaking to a White House official actually, well before this report came out about why it is that this president seems so willing to instruct aides, because he has done it before on other projects, to do what needs to be done regardless of whether it's illegal. And what this person told me was that, Donald Trump is a businessman. He ran his companies by just knowing that you get sued over things. And it's another example. Take Jared Kushner's Office of American Innovation, or whatever they're calling it these days, that being a businessman, being an outsider, doesn't necessarily translate perfectly to the role of a bureaucrat. And especially when you're dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, this is a particularly apt point, I think. The other thing I'd say is that he's also hearing from his campaign manager. He's hearing from Brad Parscale and others on his reelection campaign that say, we can't tout much about a wall. This was your most concrete, no pun intended, promise heading into the 2016 election. And all we can say is that we've built less than 60 miles of replacement wall, much of which was appropriated, John, as you know, under the Obama administration. So yes, it's important to Trump, but also he has surrogates, aides on the campaign who say, we don't know what to tell supporters about why this structure doesn't actually exist yet.
Right. But let's be careful not to normalize this either, because of the political pressures the president might be facing, or this idea that a businessman doesn't fully appreciate the niceties of law and is just a guy rolling up his sleeves to do whatever it takes to get it done. The reality is this. The president of the United States is instructing aides to break the law to achieve his goals and floating a pardon, a presidential pardon, for them if they do so when they express concerns about the unworkability or illegality of his orders. That's insane, folks.
And by the way, I mean, to Elena's point about how the campaign is frustrated, Joe, about the fact that the wall hasn't been built, and they know that many of his supporters, that was their sort of one of their single issue, probably their single issue. So what do you do if you can't legally do something and a campaign is approaching? You claim it's already being done. I have the press release. They've sent out millions of these press releases where they claim that the wall is already being built. But as Elena said, they're refurbishing an existing wall. But they're claiming that this is new walls because they know, I guess they're worried that this was such a big campaign promise.
Well, there's no doubt that he's going to continue to use immigration as his number one issue. He wouldn't be diverting money from FEMA ahead of a hurricane if they didn't believe that that was their rock solid issue. He'll do what he's done on everything. He'll either make up facts, he'll say, don't believe what you read and see, trust me. Or he'll do what John was talking about. He'll tell people, break the law. I'll give you a blanket presidential pardon. My guess is that story will have more legs in Washington than some of the others, and might move more Democrats toward the impeachment. More of a majority of Democrats, because that's not a hard thing to prove. You don't need to read 484 pages. That's the president telling people break the law. People get that.
Right.
Thank you all very much for this conversation. So much news this morning. Meanwhile, their tropical storm Dorian's track has changed overnight in a very big way. So what it means for Puerto Rico and what it means for the East Coast of the U.S. next. All right, all morning we'll be following this breaking weather news affecting millions of Americans in the path of Tropical Storm Dorian. The National Hurricane Center says Dorian is getting stronger. They expect the eastern side of Puerto Rico to take a direct hit. Forecasters now say the storm could strengthen into a Category 2 hurricane by the time it hits Florida this weekend. CNN meteorologist Chad Myers has the latest forecast. Okay, now what's the model doing?
And many models, Allison, well above Category 2 approaching the east coast of Florida. No question about that. National Hurricane Center being conservative, not really wanting to alarm anyone because that's still 5 days away. It's never a good thing when you can see a hurricane or a tropical storm on radar. That means it's getting close to land. We always like to watch them on satellite because it's just in the middle of nowhere. Well, now we can actually see the center of circulation trying to become an eye here, about 85 miles to the south and southeast of St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, this storm is going to run right across the Virgin Islands and into the Vieques area and into the eastern half of Puerto Rico. That's what was hit so very hard the last time by Maria. And here's what you're talking about, this Category 2 event that could occur anywhere from Jacksonville to Miami. The cone is wide, 5 days away. The cone is 200 miles on either side. And even one of the models that I've been looking at, the American model, actually takes this thing and misses Florida altogether, a lot like Matthew. So we have a lot more options here, and 120 hours away in a model is a long, long time. Storm 60 miles per hour, gusts to 70. Hurricane Hunter just left Curacao. They are now on the way to the storm to check for lower pressures and to check to see how the wind has been doing in the overnight hours. There are the models, and there are the ones that missed the U.S. altogether. Let's hope that's the answer.
Chad, you have your work cut out for you. Days of concerns here. Stand by. Keep us posted.
Will do.
All right, we have more breaking news for you this morning. Numerous reports that the Sackler family, who owns the drug maker Purdue Pharma, could give up ownership under a proposed settlement to end lawsuits related to the opioid crisis. The settlement could cost the family billions of dollars of their own money. CNN's Alexander Field joins us now with all the breaking details. You just got back from Oklahoma where there was a judge who ruled on this case. Now it seems like the Sacklers maybe see the writing on the wall.
Absolutely. And what we're learning, John, is that the Sacklers could be paying as much as $3 billion of their own money, according to reports from the New York Times, the Washington Post, and NBC News. NBC also reporting that that number could be part of a much larger settlement to the tune of some $10 to $12 billion. That's money that would go toward resolving thousands of state and federal claims against the drug maker, all alleging that they have fueled the country's opioid epidemic. This fall, a federal trial is set to kick off involving some 2,000 cities and counties who all say that pharmaceutical companies, including Purdue, should be held responsible. Purdue has, of course, been facing these kinds of allegations for years. Video obtained by ProPublica shows Dr. Richard Sackler's deposition from a 2015 lawsuit.
Do you know how much the Sackler family has made off the sale of OxyContin?
I don't know.
But fair to say it's over $1 billion.
It would be fair to say that, yes.
Do you know if it's over $10 billion?
I don't think so.
You know if it's over $5 billion?
I don't know.
All right.
That suit was resolved with the settlement. As for the latest talks about a proposed settlement, Purdue has put out a statement saying this: while Purdue Pharma is prepared to defend itself vigorously in the opioid litigation, the company has made clear that it sees little good coming from years of wasteful litigation and appeals. The people and communities affected by the opioid crisis need help now. And John and Allison, as you point out, all of these details about a possible settlement breaking just on the heels of that important decision in Oklahoma, in which a judge decided that Johnson & Johnson needed to be held responsible for the opioid epidemic, telling them that they should pay the state some $572 million.
All right, Alexander Field, stay on this for us. It seems like it's developing very quickly.
Yes, this is far from over. Thank you very much, Alex.
All right, the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, is hosting a 200-person holiday party at a Washington, D.C. hotel. He's paying $30,000 out of his own pocket. Guess who's gonna get it?